Okay, so I wanted to make a second video I want to make another video about this because this is a really big topic of addiction. Like what it is, what drives it, how it shows up in our lives, how it affects us, where it starts. And there's a lot of good material out there about that, about trauma being the genesis of addiction. I think that's pretty well established, that traumatic situations which were not processed by us become addictive processes, but I think it's overlooked in a lot of areas of our lives because we look at drugs, we look at substances, we look at gambling, maybe we look at sex sometimes, relationships. But I think even in the recovery world, like some of those other ones are overlooked, because people are engaging in them and not wanting to stop or not able to stop, But they have all this clean time in the program, all the sobriety time, whatever you want to call it. And so in the last video, I was talking about, like what happens when you get to that point where the energy is buzzing, humming, it's got you, this like elusive feeling, whatever it is that you're wanting to do. In this instance, let's say sex. Let's say you want to go and have an affair. You're in a committed relationship. This person loves you, they give you their heart. They want to spend their life with you. They think they know where they're at. So they're in a frame of reality of your relationship together, But maybe one of the partners struggles in this area with intimacy and looks outside of the relationship. And maybe it's an addictive process for them of usually starting with porn. And porn is damaging in many ways, but which we won't get into so much, but except for like it really makes this process of intimacy unrealistic, and it really creates a framework of like sex in the mind that's divorced from emotional commitment and responsibility. You don't need that with porn. You don't need to know the person. You don't need to care about their feelings. You don't need to woo them. You don't need to know how to flirt. You don't need to know how to create emotional safety. You can just act out your instant gratification of your desires fairly easily at anywhere. You carry this around with you in your pocket, and so the ability of this, it's the access to it. And this is we're not going to go to that in this video so much, but this is a huge problem for boys in our society that are growing up right now, is that they all have access to porn and most of them are using it. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next generation we see even more divorce and even less committed relationships, even more unhappiness and addiction. Okay, so how do you interrupt it? What do we do? What's driving it? That's a good question. Because like once it gets there to where it's going, this train is going, it's really hard to stop a train that's in motion, that really goes against the laws of physics. Once an object is in motion, it wants to continue in motion. And so once this addictive process is in motion, it's really challenging to divert it. It's like it's tuned in to what it wants. The feeling for it is there. The memory, the brain is firing lots of chemicals to drive the behavior. Why? Because it's worked for something. It was used for a purpose at one point. And so it's working. That's the key to remember. It's working. It's a coping strategy that works on one level. And so taking away our coping skills is not a good plan. I'm just going to take away my coping skills, and then I'm just going to bare knuckle it. I'm just going to through. It's fucking heroic, and it doesn't work. And then it doesn't work, and then we feel shame because we failed again. I failed again. I did it. I fucked up. I used porn again. Whatever it is. I got high again. I went and gambled again. So there's something driving it behind the surface. And that's a journey to figure out for each person. It's like, what's driving this behavior? Why do I use this for soothing? What is it doing for me? What does it do for me? What do I get from it? These are really good questions to journal about. These are really good questions to take to a counselor or therapist and explore, to find out the nature of what's happening. Because once you make the unconscious conscious, then you have a choice. But until you do that, you have no choice. When it's unconscious, you have no choice. When the behavior is being driven by something you don't know or understand, where's their choice? It can just feel like slavery. Like you're repeatedly doing it over and over and over again, wanting to do something different. I want to be better. When that shame and that guilt hits, I want to be better. I want to do different. I want to be a good partner. I want to be a good father. I want all these things. And there's no power to make those changes because we don't even know what is happening. We don't even know what's triggering. And this is where we come into triggers and things, because and you hear those words, trigger, and that's a word that if you believe in the therapy world, you're like, yes, triggers. I'm just triggered by this. Or even the political left-wing ideologies, triggers, trigger warning. I was so triggered, but it's real. I think it's just overused, but it's real that there's a precipitating event or circumstance or feeling that starts this mode of action inside, starts these feelings. Oh, it's a birdie. and we run with it, and we watch ourselves do it because we want it. Plain and simple. At that point, it's something's triggered, the feelings, the chemicals, we want it. We're driven to do it. It makes sense. We've done it in the past. If you've done it a lot of times in the past, it's even stronger, right? Those grooves in the brain, they're stronger. This is how you meet this need. What is the need? The need is to feel good. Why don't I feel good? Oh, because I feel not good enough. Because we got stories running in the background. I feel not good enough. I feel weak. I feel disempowered. I feel powerless. I got in a fight again with my partner. I don't feel good about myself. Whatever. We got in a fight about money. Oh, that's a big one for a lot of people, money. I don't have enough money. I feel I feel bad about myself. I watched a thing with Jordan Peterson about The Simpsons, and he deconstructed that story with Homer and how Homer was like a fucking idiot, bumbling fool, but what made him noble was that he was always really cared for his family. Like, that was his focus, was his family, you know? But his insecurity around money, he tortured him because of this. So, because our orientation to responsibility as men is that we need it. We need to be responsible. And when we don't adopt that responsibility, which often happens in addiction, is not adopting responsibility. And that can be for women too, but just for the focus of that piece, I'm looking at men. We suffer. And so this drives addiction, is like a lack of taking responsibility for our lives, and a feeling of powerlessness and weakness and not good enough story drives. I'm not good enough. I always fail. And so, how do I feel better? I feel better by whatever's happening with the sex. I feel better. And I'm processing as we go through this. I'm kind of processing my own story a little bit here. So I'm feeling it, you know, and that's different than me just telling you some fucking book knowledge. Because you can feel it through me if you really like put yourself in that place of like wanting to feel. We can feel each other, you know. But that's a different topic. So all this doesn't answer the question of how to disengage that circuit once it's active. We need to interrupt it. How do we interrupt it? Well, we need to call someone. We need to tell someone what we're thinking, what we're feeling. Tell someone that's not going to encourage the behavior. Tell someone that's not going to enable us. You know, like I have certain friends, if I called a certain friend and told him like, hey man, I'm feeling like I want to fuck some chick, you know, he'd be like, dude, you should do it. You're a man. Men should be able to have sex with multiple women. You know, it's like our right or something. There are men that believe that, and I at times share some of those sentiments, you know, which is why ethical non-monogamy sounds really great, because the idea of me being able to just fulfill my primal urges sounds like something I'd really want. But in reality, the addictive processes behind why we do the things we do is still there, you know? And so one can justify all types of behaviors based on lots of evidence if they want to find that evidence for it. But we really know on the inside if something is like out of control. And sometimes we don't want to admit that to ourselves, you know? And so if something is out of control, you know, maybe like a justification or an enabling of it isn't helpful, you know? Now, this is a paradox, and I don't know if I've got enough time to really go into that right this minute, but because sometimes maybe that needs to be challenged. But in this instance, when we're dealing with addiction, a justifying of the addiction and enabling of it isn't helpful for the person suffering. So, for instance, if someone is suffering with a weed addiction, enabling that behavior and telling them that they should just feel okay with smoking weed, like it's just weed, it's a medicine, like it's good, you know, you need to change the paradigm around it. Like, there might be some truth to that about the paradigm change, you know, but it doesn't help the person suffering because they need some space away from it. They need some space away from it to reprogram the brain, you know. And so if the problem is sex, like going out and having, you know, setting up an environment where a person can go out and have sex whenever they want, like it's such a slippery slope, and it's oftentimes empty of what a person really wants, because you know, what's the opposite of addiction? Well, it's connection. It's connection. If a person feels connected to themselves, if a person feels connected to others, then they're much less likely to engage in addictive behaviors. If a person's part of a community that's meaningful to them, has friendships and relationships, and feels connected to themselves and what they're doing, then addiction is much less. Doesn't mean it gets rid of it, but it's much less. So as we heal, we become connected to ourselves and others. So that's it. That's the one side of it, is to build on those things, not while you're in the addictive surge of energy, but before that, in your daily life, you know, to develop a life that feels connected to itself, that justifies itself, you know, something that where the interactions and the things that you do are meaningful to you and to others, and you know, you're not so much in a cage, right? Because I think that was really, really interesting about that, those experiments with rats, that, you know, the old idea of addiction was if you're in a cage, if you put a rat in a cage with cocaine water and regular water, the rat would always drink the cocaine water until it died, you know? And so they thought, that's addiction. That's what addiction is. And I've used this example before, but, you know, Vietnam showed us that that wasn't the case. When all the vets came back and we thought we were going to have like an epidemic of heroin addicted people, and it didn't happen. They came back and they stopped using the heroin once they came back, people who were like heavily addicted to it over there in Vietnam, you know. And I mean, if you think about it, you go to the hospital for a broken whatever and they give you morphine. Like, why doesn't everybody who does that become addicted to it? You would think if it's just because you give someone a drug and they become addicted. That's not how it works. So I want to let this truck go by. So then they found out if they put a rat inside a rat paradise with rat mates for it to fuck, rat wheels to spin on, and all the food and all the environment, like a rat paradise, and then they put the cocaine water in the regular water, the rat would almost never drink the cocaine water because it didn't need it, you know. It had everything that it needed. Its needs were met. Okay, so if unmet needs and lack of connection drive addiction, okay, then the work is to identify what our needs are. And the work is to develop connection in our lives with people and with ourselves. And if those things happen, then perhaps one can stop the addictive however it's showing up. We see this in recovery all the time, because people come in, they find new relationships within the program. You know, they could connect to themselves through the step work. and they connect to some kind of higher power. They connect to others through vulnerability, through emotional responsibility, and taking responsibility for themselves and for the things that they've done, and going out and like trying to make those things right. Like there's so much power in those acts that like change our neurocognitive processes, that like reprogram the computer in our brain to be more functional. So it's powerful. And so what do I tell her if she asks me how I'm going to soothe myself? Well, I need to soothe myself beforehand. I need to continue to develop these relationships in my life on a daily basis. I need to be in ceremony. I need to be in the rooms. I need to be talking to men that I can trust, men who have that sense of focus of responsibility for family, responsibility for self, for honesty, for integrity. I need to have accountability like that in my life all the time. Okay, there's that part of it. And then if the train is going, it needs to be treated seriously. Like, okay, this train is going. I'm starting to want this. I need to call somebody. I need to talk to somebody. I need to write about it. I need to share about it. I need to do something with this energy before it becomes too much for me and I'm just like taken along by the train. So that's my thoughts on this. Maybe I'll more fully develop it as time goes, these ideas, and if this is valuable to you, please like and subscribe to this, and I'll continue to explore these topics within myself and, at a more macro view of recovery and healing, because it's such a big topic and we all need healing on some level, Not that I have the answers, but maybe we can go on this journey together to heal ourselves, to heal our families and our communities, if this could be a vehicle to open our minds, for me to learn and open my mind through sharing, and for you to maybe hear something that will click a switch for you, fill in some gap or piece that was missing, as others have done for me, then that's a beautiful thing and worth doing. Peace.